Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Michelle Saeed, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and really those strategies driving their future growth. Today, we're thrilled to have Mike Schindler joining us. He's the founder and the principal of the VUCA Principle, and also a U.S. Navy veteran and a leadership expert, helping organizations and individuals navigate volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity through tailored training, coaching, and veteran support initiatives. We'll explore his founding story, really how he's transforming leadership, and what the vision looks like for scaling his impact. So with that being said, Mike, welcome to Founders Future.
Hey, thank you. I'm honored to be here. This is going to be fun.
Yes. Let's dive in. So take us back to the beginning. What inspired you to really launch the business? Maybe around uncertainty or lack of resilience in the leadership space. What was that catalyst for you?
Yeah, I think the catalyst was 2000 actually when we launched that or 2020 when we launched that business, which was right in the middle of a global pandemic. And what we realized is a lot of leaders and even Hollywood, I mean, we have a film studio in Hollywood, everything shut down and nobody really had an action plan. Nobody knew how to navigate this global pandemic. And that was really the catalyst, is how do we help leaders and everyday humans move from stuck to unstuck using some of the best principles that we learned in the military on how to navigate chaotic times.
Wow. So as far as it goes with like really the deliverables and some of the clients you work with, what is your business model? If you can share with us today, really how you package your work using some of those principles that you've learned from like the military, how is all of that structured?
Yeah, so it's really structured. We do both cohort models, we do large corporate trainings, working with executives or senior leaders. So we'll do these group settings, and at times we'll go one-on-one with individuals where we are really trying to get them on an even, almost like a even, we got to create a common language. Does it make sense, Misha? In the military, we have common vernaculars, we have common language. We have acronyms. People joke all the time about the acronyms that we use. And a lot of companies do as well. But the key to great growth in any organization is solid communication. And so the goal of what we do is we offer these packages where we are going to work with your leaders over an 8-week period of time. And we're going to create a common language. We're going to create we're going to embed the VUCA principles. Okay. Now, the cool part about VUCA, that being an Army War College training, stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, the things that hit people in the face, right? But the other cool part of that is how you combat it, which is with VUCA, which is vision, understanding, clarity, and adaptability. So we created a tool that's called above and below the line. And so when we go into organizations, we give them the tools that help their individuals, their teams break through. They can assess really quick. So the first thing is I need to assess where I'm at. Okay. I need to assess it. Now I need to acknowledge it. Okay. I need to name it. And after that, what I need to do is I need to really put an action plan behind it. And then after the action plan, I need to create accountability behind it. And we teach them these 4A's, but we give them the tools to go ahead and create that launch pad.
I love that. So a lot of that self-implementation, right? You really looked at standardizing a lot of those principles from the coaching side of the business, building that into the assessment. So as far as scaling goes, right, how are you thinking about productization on the offer side? What does that next step look like for you as a founder as you're looking at continued growth and scale, especially with your fulfillment model? There's like probably an inherent cap as well on the number of clients you can even take. Walk me through what your thought process is around that.
Yeah, so that's really cool. It all evolved out of the film that we did. It's VUCA, The Secret to Living in the 21st Century. And then we created this massive leadership program and started training up leaders across the world. And then when AI came on scene in 2022, we got really involved in AI and bots. And then we actually have created something called an embodied companion that's called Max. And Max is, and not just Max, but Echo and Future and Edge And we created almost like this Jedi Council. There's superheroes that have backstories, Hollywood type backstories. It's mixing Marvel with Star Trek, right? Because all the Marvel movies are VUCA conditions, and Star Trek is aspiring to where we want to be, go, and have as far as a utopian type life. And so we have created these embodied agents that will really be people's companion. Because what we know is today people are talking to AI like it's their friend. They look at it for therapy, they look at it for companionship and identifying their own purpose. And what we said is, how can we use these companions to be a first bridge, so to pull people from being stuck into being hopeful, and then tying them back into real live coaches. And so that's where we're evolving the company, which people will see here in 2025, probably Q4 of 2025 when we launch that.
That's super exciting. As far as it goes, let's say a corporate leader or like a veteran transitioning to leadership comes to the VUCA principle. What does that journey look like as far as the initial consultation to what success looks like? What are some of those key milestones and steps that you bridge into their implementation? And how do you ensure that your program resonates with their needs?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do what's called a 30-minute hero session is, and that's like a free consultation that we do. And that's really for us to determine whether or not we are a good fit. Is this somebody that's ready to take on the journey? Because what we're really doing is mapping their hero's journey. We're helping them map their hero's journey. And so what we end up doing is we will work with that individual for 8 weeks, right? If we in fact pull them on. And we start with 5 key areas, and that's mental, physical, spiritual, relationships, and finances. And we start there because those are the driving pillars for most humans, right? How are they doing mentally? How are they doing physically? How are they doing spiritually? What do their relationships look like? And what about their finances? And if we can help them design moonshots in those areas, their big goals, or identify what an 8 looks like in that area. And I say an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10, an 8 being, if I could have my best day in this area, this is what it would look like. Does it make sense? So that's the 8. We use 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. We use 8 because 8 is the infinity loop. And it's also something that symbolizes new beginnings. And we want people to really think about their life as every day I get a choice to have a new beginning. And if I can design this new beginning, what does that look like? And that really is a process for some people, Misha, because they've never spent the time to think about it.
Yeah, 100%. I think, especially in the leadership landscape, a lot of C-suite individuals you probably work with, they don't even have the breathing room or even like that idea of where to turn, especially when it comes to like how they can start to improve some of those key areas you discussed there.
Well, and I'll build on that because what happens in leadership, there's over $366 billion spent on leadership
Yeah.
programs a year. And when you look at that, about 75% of them are ineffective.
Mhm.
And what it is, most leadership programs do not address the individual's operating system.
Yeah.
So what they do is they throw programs on top of a bad operating system, and so there's no implementation. And so what we end up doing is we really look at their operating system first and say, this is where we have to have growth first,
Right.
and then we can talk about expansion after that.
What do you feel are some of those initial friction points or areas of improvement across your client base, like on average, where it's we know we've seen this is a pattern? If you can share with us, what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's the pattern is, I'll tell you what the pattern is. Most people want the easy button, but just fix me, right? That's the pattern that we see. It's people going, I am overwhelmed. There's so much hitting me in the face. I just need something, just fix me. And we are very clear that we can't fix you.
Mm-hmm.
We can be Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you're Luke Skywalker, and you're the hero in this story. I'm just the guide, but you've got to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's people being willing to do the work. And they're willing to do the work, Misha, when they have a huge moonshot. And I don't know if you're familiar with the term moonshot, but a moonshot, as some people call it, a big, hairy, audacious goal. But a moonshot is, I want to go to the moon, which seems impossible, but we know it's possible. So we get people to think about, if you could do anything in life, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
And when they start to think in those terms, when they start to dream again, things trigger. and it starts to fire off the synapses in the brain. So it's a lot of neuroscience back basis where we know that if we can get people to think a certain way, it begins to fire up the brain and the creative part of their being. And then because it's their dream, then they're willing to do the work. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what we have to get people to. And oftentimes it takes a little bit of time.
I love that. That's so powerful because there's another saying where if you shoot for the stars, and even if you don't hit the stars, you're going to be somewhere in the sky at least. It's all about
Yeah.
setting the bar high enough to where that aim, that trajectory is going in that direction. But even if you're not on that bullseye, you're still close to that rather than setting it down here, in essence.
Yeah.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
So, as far as it goes with like getting your messaging out there, reaching out to your audience, on the client acquisition side, what are you doing right now to generate leads, whether that's social, organic, paid ads, word of mouth? What are some of those strategies that you've implemented into your core business?
Yeah. So a lot of it is we'll do a lot of things on LinkedIn. We tend to be pretty active there. Truth be told, lately, because we've been in three films, working on three films, we've been a little busy. We've been very selective as far as who we bring on as a client. And I would say that the greater portion of what we've developed over the years is really word of mouth because
Mhm.
people, once they go through this experience, they make a recommendation. Oh my gosh, I got to bring this into my company. Oh my gosh, have you guys worked with these individuals? And that's where Chris and I, who is the co-founder, my business partner, he and I talk a lot about this is we get to hand select the clients that we work with. We're not cheap by any stretch, but that's because we're Hollywood guys and tech startup guys. And we have a leadership company that's really designed to pull the best out of people and make the world a better place. And we would love to share it with the world. But there's only so much of us. And that's why we had to develop the tech side of the business while we got this off the ground too. So a lot of it is word of mouth, and we'll see, and things are changing rapidly, right? How people do lead gen today is so different than when I got started 30 years ago. And it's everything is evolving so quickly. I will say that we're fortunate in that a lot of what we do is referral based and just people reaching out via LinkedIn.
I want to get your thoughts on this because we talk a lot about it on our podcast is that idea of lead gen and predictability, right? What that next step
Yeah.
is evolutionizing that, especially with referrals, like they're the most high intent as far as getting them in as clients, but it's always not the most sustainable or consistent or predictable way to generate leads. What does that next step look like for you? Because I know you guys said you're building out the tech still. Is paid ads something you guys are looking at? How are you evolutionizing things on that acquisition side?
Yeah, we might eventually get to paid ads. We've been fortunate we've not done paid ads since we launched the company. Does that mean we never will? I think with our embodied companions, that in some ways is a paid ad, right? Because every time they use Max, that's promoting what we're doing. They're building a relationship that then that then redirects them back into a live coach. So I would say my paid ad is different because my paid ad is it's a tech startup, right? That has an embodied companion. And that in many ways is our advertising. So we've moved away from traditional advertising, not because it's not a great place. It's just it's easier for us to track usage of an embodied AI companion because we can see the activity that goes on there, not the conversations, but certainly the time spent. And I don't know. We might go back to paid ads. We did that in the early stages, and we might just do that because they can be effective. So when you spend a lot of money on tech, you begin to think that's my paid ad right there. So that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's still something you guys are thinking about. But a lot of, especially as a founder, when we talk about it, is that idea of evolving ourselves to open ourselves up to other ways to market. So still something you're thinking about, but you're looking at using tech essentially as that billboard to really get a lot of that messaging out there as far as your core audience goes.
Yep.
So talk
Yep.
a little bit about sales. What does that look like right now? Is it you having those consults with your clients? What is your discovery process as far as consulting with some of the clients that you work with? Or do you have a team in place handling some of those components?
Yeah, we do have a team. What we have found though is what moves the needle, and I think maybe every founder probably goes through this a little bit, is oftentimes the clients want to have direct access to us, right? And what seems to move the needle is when they do have direct access to us, that's when that needle moves. And so I tend to do, because again, we go into the handpicked arena, we get to handpick our clients, is I tend to be actively involved in that sales cycle. The team might pull up some leads, or they might pull up some interested parties, or they might refer some people over our direction. But then it becomes a very active role for Chris and I to play, in that we jump on the phone and we'll interview, because sometimes it might be a Fortune 100 company, and we'll be talking to the CEO. And it's really for us to do a proper assessment to determine whether or not they are a good fit. That's really important to us. And it's hard as a founder to offload that onto a sales team, because we're not just selling bananas. You know what I'm saying? We're really trying to understand, is there a good culture fit? Can we impact culture with you? And are you willing to do the work to get there? And if any one of those clients are like, yeah, no, I just want to spend money, then we're not really interested, which might sound
counterintuitive.
strange. Yeah. But again, we're in this for impact. And that's really important to us. There was years ago, Misha, I've told this story before on other podcasts, but years ago, I was on a live radio show, and we had launched a program that required people to pay up front. And then if they completed the program, we'd reimburse 90% of it. And it was for veterans. And she said something that kind of put me on my heels a little bit. She said, how much money do you want to make? And before she got to that, I told her what the program cost. It was like $50 per participant. It was low cost, and we'd reimburse 40 when they complete the program. And she says, sounds like you want to make money on the backs of veterans. And I thought that was really interesting to me, being a veteran. And so my dad taught me to be curious. And I said, that's interesting. And before I could build on that, she said, how much money do you want to make? And I'd never been asked that question. And I just blurted this answer out, Misha. I said, $100 million. And she's $100 million. You want to make $100 million? And again, this is live radio. And I'm like, yeah, $100 million, a dollar for every life we impact. And that not only changed the conversation, but it also changed me, because I realized that my motivation isn't so much money. It's really impact. It's about people seeing their human potential and rising up to their true human potential. Because when we do, I believe we make the world a better place.
Yeah. And there's that saying, passion fuels profitability, right? Which is often salespeople, they lack that sort of empathy and integrity, right? When it comes to really connecting with their prospects or someone that they potentially may work with, or like the fulfillment team may work with. But I want to get your thoughts on this. Looking ahead, are you looking at bringing on a team maybe to help on the sales side while still keeping that personalization? How are you looking at that from like an evolution perspective as you're looking?
We are, yeah, we are downrange. Yeah, for sure. Especially with what we're doing with Max, what we call Hello Max. If people go to it's VUCA Max, eventually they'll be able to see Max on there. That we will have a team that understands not just the technology, but the impact of what that will do. And there will be both a B2C, business to consumer, but also B2B play, where we have a whole HR team as well called the HR Ally. We believe that the HR industry is going to change rapidly, where they're laying off HR individuals, but the ones that remain will be more focused on like a human evolution officer, right? They won't be so much policing policy and what people think and say and do. They'll be more like, my job in HR is to elevate my team and make sure that they're operating above the VUCA line, not below it, right? That they're not operating in chaos or volatility or uncertainty of this stuff, but they're operating in a way that's fulfilling the vision, that they're helping our clients understand and gain clarity, and that they can shift quickly when things change, because things are changing quickly. And so people have to be more adaptable. And so we have something called the HR Ally. And so, yeah, in the next 6 months, we will be adding that team, and we're pretty excited about it.
That's incredible. So on that note, you're making a really big impact in the leadership and the veteran support space. What is that continued vision going into the rest of 2025 and even into 2026? Are you aiming for specific initiatives, growing those on the forefront? Paint that picture for us.
Yeah, no, on the veteran fund, I will always be tied to that. I recently stepped down from my nonprofit, and that's under new leadership now, which I think is great. I provided leadership there for over a decade. And so for veterans, because we did all raise our hand and say, we're going to make a commitment to bettering this country. We will always have initiatives that are centered around veterans,
Mm,
whether it's reduced cost or whether it's having a specialized, even embodied companion that
mm.
speaks directly to some of the issues that our brothers and sisters go through. We will always remain committed to those who serve. That's a big initiative for us.
Amazing. I love that. I want to get your thoughts on this. The leadership development industry is evolving with a lot of trends like AI driven coaching and virtual
Yeah.
training. How do you see the industry changing, and how is VUCA Principle positioning itself at that forefront to lead in this space?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's essentially what you call hybrid coaching models now, right? I believe that, and again, that's one of the things that you're seeing with Max is people oftentimes will be very transparent with
Mm,
AI because they don't feel judgment, they don't feel guilt, they don't feel shame, right? Because in their mind, they're like, this is technology, so I can tell it anything I want and probably get objective feedback is the assumption. What we're noticing is in the coaching industry, and we do this now, is when I'm working with an individual, I'll do the one-on-one, I'll do the personal assessments, I will still have those conversations. And then I use AI to go ahead and put information in there, okay, in a trusted, secure, encrypted arena so their information doesn't get out. And I will go, I need you to evaluate this and help me identify areas that I can work with this individual to improve just micro wins. Where
mm,
can I develop micro wins? And so the coach will oftentimes need another coach, an objective coach. And that's where I think AI is going. And that's where the coaching industry, the best coaches today will be the ones that can use AI to not replace them, but to
mhm.
make them better as a coach.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing with Max. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. But also at the same time, still keeping that human centricity, that personalization, still keeping that at the
100%. Yeah, it
especially,
has to be.
yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're working with clients, you're in those intimate settings, right? One on one. That's super important. If we brought a genie in the room, it's a fun question. We ask every guest on here, and you had all of these unlimited resources after you rub the lamp. What would you implement immediately to accelerate the growth of VUCA Principle?
I would move Max from an MVP to a full-fledged LLM, essentially. If I had all the money in the world, I'd have the five embodied agents would have five different brains, right?
Mm,
So they'd operate like a true independent counsel that would be able to advise the client. I would be sure that 10% of any revenue that we brought in would go back to charity and go back to global impact and
mm,
helping people become better. And the third, I would find some way to keep me wise and not making dumb decisions. I don't know how I'd do that, Misha, but that'd be like, boy, just continue to give me clarity and wisdom and discernment, because I think those are going to be three key areas for any leader today is clarity, wisdom, and discernment.
mm.
And we're going to need that in leadership. And I think your best leaders are going to incorporate those three areas in their life and in their coaching mechanisms is
Yeah.
we will have to lead with clarity. We will
Mm,
have to have wisdom and be wise, have a wise counsel around us. And we will have to discern the information that we're getting and giving to be
mm.
sure that it's on point.
I love that. Now, as we wrap up, we're in the lightning round. What's the best piece of advice that you've received about scaling a leadership business that you can offer to our audience today? Some of the founders, entrepreneurs, even entrepreneurs that are on the edge about stepping away from a 9 to 5 or just the safety of something else. What would you say on one last note to us?
Yeah, I'd say be sure that you're helping individuals solve a problem that
Mm,
they really want solved. I think sometimes we get married to our tools or we get married to, I think this is a really good idea, but really the key in any business is solving a market demand.
mm,
And I would I would say to those that have a 9 to 5, keep doing it. Prove your model. Okay, prove your model on the side,
mhm.
and there will be an inflection point when you know it's time to step away. You'll have that little inner voice inside that says, you know what, I'm going to do this. And sometimes it's the scariest moment ever where you're like, I can't believe I'm leaving security. But I would tell people there's no security anymore. Okay. There's no security in government jobs. There's no security in tech jobs. There's no security. I think the only security is if you're a plumber and an electrician and maybe a builder and
Yeah.
right your trades and even the medical industry is changing. If you're in one of those trades, those professions, you're pretty good. But if you're just in a normal 9 to 5 and think you have security, most companies are at will, and you can walk in on a Monday and escort it out on a Monday afternoon. It's that quick. So Just be sure that you're solving a problem.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And that's how you create awareness, right? At the end of the day, with the
That's it.
going out there. Mike, what's like the best way for the listeners to get in touch with you and learn a little bit more about VUCA Principle?
Yeah, they could visit it's VUCA Max, so ITSVUCAMAX.com. They could certainly find me on LinkedIn. That's easy. Mike Schindler on LinkedIn. They'll recognize the bald head, hopefully, and it'll be one of the Mike Schindlers on there. Or they can email me. To be honest with you, they can email me at mschindler@itsvuca.com. And I know people think I'm crazy when I put my email out there, but I would challenge people, if they're on the fence, reach out.
Yeah.
We're not here to sell you on anything except who you can become. That's it. And if we can help you, then we'll put a proposal together. And if we can't, we'll send you a different direction. That's just really how we operate.
I love that. Amazing. On that note, thank you so much for being a guest on Founders Future. This was insane, everything you're doing on the AI side of things. And to our listeners, of course, Mike just linked his email, his website, and his LinkedIn profile. We'll make sure all of those are linked in the summary below. For more resources and insights, you can visit us over at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses scale through world-class sales systems. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. So until then, everyone, keep on climbing, and we'll see you all on the next one. Mike, thank you so much once again for joining us.